The state of Oregon was the first state in the union to decriminalize cannabis in 1973, but it took until 2015 to fully legalize sale and growth of the plant. Since then, it's been a battle in and out of courts on testing, licensing, and that delicate balance between supply and demand. Now, two of the largest cannabis business associations have merged to solidify their lobbying efforts and deal with some of the other issues that continue to plague that state. On In the Weeds this week, I talked to three Oregonians who are right in the middle of the challenges for growth in the cannabis business. How big a deal is this?
I think it's really huge for a couple reasons. First of all, the market is really, really tough in terms of people making money. So if we're going to be spending money supporting organizations, doing lobbying, connecting with other licensees, that is all after, we have to pay taxes on that money. So being able to consolidate our dues and then pay just one organization, that will immediately increase the amount of funds that we have available so that we can be more influential. And then the second reason is just that we need to work together. And as this latest conversation with Aspergillus has proved, we need to actually be talking to each other and come up with strategy so that we can be stronger together and move the industry forward.
Marianne's telling me is, a very historic deal in Oregon that these two associations have come together. Explain how it all came out, because you were right in the middle of it, weren't you?
I'm definitely right in the middle of it. The thing you gotta understand, it's a small community, right? We all know each other. We all work together on these issues, and we worked together on public policy with the OCA folks for many, many years. So, I think what it was is that, there's a combination of both internal and external factors that made now the correct time for this merger to take place. And those internal factors were just the process of building trust between the boards of both of these organizations had matured. And that's not something that happens overnight because both the boards of CIAO and OCA take the responsibility of their members and to the broader cannabis community really seriously. And so, it took a long time, I think, for that internal trust to build. And then there was a catalyst in the form of a number of simultaneous crises that hit the Oregon cannabis industry. And we've had, major political crises. We've had a regulatory agency that has, I don't want to say is in disarray, but has had some significant challenges, political and leadership wise, over the last year. We have a legislature that has been unable to stay in session for the entirety of the session for, I believe, 3 of the last 4 legislative sessions. And we've got federal changes on the horizon. And then you plug into so you got all of these external factors converging, right? Putting pressure on those of us that do this work to kind of to speak with one voice and to make it all tie together and pull in the same direction. And enter this Aspergillus crisis, right? And the funny thing about this whole story, the part Myron's being a little humble about, he pitched the idea of CIAO signing on and helping run and fund this litigation. And I told him to go pound sand. Originally, I was like, "That's crazy. I don't want to sue the state. That's not in our members' interest." But pretty quickly, I started to reconsider that. Myron kept working on me and other board members, and pretty soon we realized, this is the way that we need to push back at this point in Oregon. If we don't have pathways that are effective through the legislature and through working with regulatory agencies, what we're left with is the third branch of government, and that's the courts. And so that was a decision that we all collectively made, and it was the right decision. Myron kind of browbeat us into it, and we look back now and are grateful for that. And so his leadership role was really critical, both in the Aspergillus lawsuit, and frankly, I think that the success that we had there and what we all learned about what our future might look like from the Aspergillus debacle was really informative, because all of a sudden now we realize, like, if you got a couple of remediation companies that can dump what I'm sure equates to hundreds of millions of dollars in costs on the national industry with zero scientific justification and get away with it for years, what that means is that we've got to be more effective at managing the messaging, managing these processes, and really that's what this merger is all about. So, it's a time of high anxiety, but it's also a time when we're pretty hopeful and we're stoked to try out the new wheels and see how they run.
It's amazing to me coming from the East Coast and knowing the history of your state that you all need to go to the court system to get change at this point. But what does that say about Massachusetts and New York? Are we going to spend the rest of our lives looking at, for change? We're going to have to go to the courts for this. By the way, it's one of the reasons why I'm not a proponent of legalization, because it involves lawyers and politicians.
True. Okay. It's true. And we are working with New York, actually. There's some researchers in New York, Cornell University, that are actually putting out some white papers about this, because New York was one of the first states actually to acknowledge that aspergillus was a problem, and they actually got rid of their testing because of the effects it was having on their state farmers, especially their outdoor.
By any chance, do you know the Dr. Carlin at Cornell? She's in I think the botany world.
What's her first name?
First name is Carlin, and that's just the unique name. I was actually trying to get
I'm good friends with Daniela, who works Daniela, and then we were on a call the other day with a gentleman, I believe his name is David, who organized the entire thing. But if you do need them, I have contacts there.
Carlin Buckler is her name, and
I wonder, she's probably one of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, all I know is she's one of the smartest people I've ever met and interviewed. Now, you guys got to realize I was a sportscaster for 30 years, so the bar is low. Okay.
You're being too hard on yourself.
But, it's amazing the microbiologists that we've been able to talk to that have actually, started out a little bit, concerned and a little not 100% into what we're doing, or, being very cautious. And then after they've talked to us and we've really talked it through, have started being like, I agree with you guys. This is ridiculous. Let's see what we can do. The more and more, like some of the top researchers in the country, actually internationally, on mold, spores, and hemp and cannabis are actually now on our side.
Yeah, look, the more science you can have to back everyone's hope to get this plant finally recognized and normalized in our society is positive. I'm a little concerned about what the news is coming out of our nation's capital again, that they continue to have issues trying to elect somebody to run the House of Representatives. And we're dysfunctional right now as a country and as a political system. And it's very concerning to me, especially for someone who's advocating to help people like you move this forward, because I'm not that I'm glad I don't have a farm. Okay, because I'm not quite sure I would be looking forward to that. All I get to do is talk about this stuff. So I guess lastly, I just want to get how important is it to get the Safer Banking Act finally approved and open up the banks to the industry? Mike, I'll start with you. Go ahead.
I think there's a lot of really interesting aspects to talk around safe banking. I think that there's no doubt that, switching for a second, that 280E and all of the consequences, especially for larger cannabis companies, is catastrophic. But there's also a world in which, the changes to the availability of capital and the locations that can be selected and used for retail with banknotes on them from major national lenders, the slow change in covenants on real estate, et cetera, is going to make for a whole new world. How quickly it changes things is kind of anybody's guess, but the broader national cannabis market has been governed by a lack of capital for the last 12 to 18 months. I mean, that really, if there's a story, that's what it is, right? So you come into, and you know this, you come into 2020, early 21, the numbers are looking great. Everybody's going gangbusters, raising all this money, deploying all this capital. And now companies are looking around trying to figure out how to clean up their balance sheets because there is nothing left. Right. And so, with safe banking passing, I think it changes a lot. One of the funny things, however, is that normalized business loan interest rates are now creeping up closer to what we were paying on hard money, a year and a half ago, right? So that's kind of one of the other really funny things to think about here is like, yeah, it's helpful, but I mean, if standard bank interest rates go to 14%, it's like you got to kind of wonder what that does. So, I don't know. I think, Jimmy, there's a lot of people out there that have thought a lot more effectively on this than I have. But the one thing I can say is it will definitely create significant changes, most of which will be positive for most industry members, some of which will be really scary.
Right. And that's Myron. Do you echo Mike's thoughts there?
I do. One thing I do have to say, though, there is banking alternatives that are out there right now. So many of us do have bank accounts that are cannabis-friendly accounts. They're expensive. They're not great. There is no money to be borrowed. But I think one of the things that Mike did bring up, 280E, which is much more tied to, classification and of where we are, is actually, I think, a much bigger issue and will have much bigger implications across the entire spectrum, especially since, most of the reason why dispensaries have no money and are relying basically on farms to capitalize their businesses is the fact that they are paying such high taxes. They get the highest taxes. Farms, we are lucky because of our cost of goods situation, but the fact that they're paying so much in taxes really sets the ball in motion where they don't have the money to pay their taxes, their vendors, and then that snowballs down. So actually that to me would be a bigger issue, but it's a lot more complicated.
No, Marianne, you get the last word on this just because you put this whole group together and I so appreciate it. And I can't wait one day to get out to Oregon and play Bandon Dunes. That's all I can tell you guys, because that's on my bucket list once I can actually swing a golf club again. But let's not talk about my body, all right?
My husband's right there now. He's there today,
is that right?
playing golf. Yep.
Look, I've seen the photos. It's spectacular, the whole thing. So, Marianne, back to the serious nature of what we're talking about. The impact of safe banking, what will that have on your particular business?
The biggest issue for us is what Myron and Mike already talked about is 280E. But I think the impact on the larger cannabis industry cannot be overstated, simply because if we're able to finally pass some legislation at the federal level, that means that opens up the conversation to really, how do we really normalize cannabis? And then the other small example that I think can also be hugely impactful is that employees, like my employees now who work for me, they do not qualify to go buy a home and use their cannabis-derived income for a mortgage. Even though it's completely legitimate, they pay taxes on it, all of that, they can't go get a mortgage. So it really hamstrings all of the employees who are doing, just doing their jobs.
And I know for a fact there are banks in Massachusetts that are allowing mortgages to be had by cannabis employees. So again, every state has different rules and regulations. And I got to tell you, one of the most incredible things I've learned is I thought Oregon and Washington State and Colorado were way ahead of where Massachusetts is now. And they're not. It has, I get it because it was a different atmosphere 10, 15 years ago than it is now. I think we can all agree that there's been some positive movement. Mike, you're dying to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's a really important aspect to that conversation. Oregon definitely has the first mover disadvantage when it comes to this. But the flip side of that coin is that nobody, and I mean nobody, has the product diversity, quality, and retail pricing available that Oregon does. You walk into an Oregon dispensary, and believe me, at least I haven't worked everywhere, but I've worked in a lot of states in my role at Nectar. Nobody's even close. And when you can come in and buy, a 10-pack of nano gummies that are a live rosin product that are absolute top of the market, perfect, and you're paying like $11 or something for that. You know, what it tells you is it's been difficult on companies, but if you can learn to survive in Oregon, you can survive anywhere. And so the kind of business acumen married to experience, you know, Oregon has the closest thing in the nation to best practices established. And so are we hurting? Yeah. Is it tough? Yeah. But, you know, when people have more powder dry and they're looking around to find operators that really know what they're doing, this is going to become, I believe, the brain trust of the national cannabis industry, because we've been through it and we're battle tested.
Right. I like that idea, and anything that moves this thing forward. Well, Mike, I so appreciate it. Congratulations on getting this done, because I know you worked hard. Go ahead and party now. You can. Marianne, again, thank you. I was so excited to see you got you in that in the story that KOIN did. And last, I'm going to ask you guys, does the television market, the local news, cover cannabis the right way in your neck of the woods?
I think so. The reporters, I think, do a good job of asking questions and being informed and understanding. Mike has a really good longstanding relationship with a number of reporters, and I think us being professional towards them just gives them a reason to be professional back towards us, and we have a lot of mutual respect, and they operate with integrity, and I really appreciate that.
I appreciate media that operates with integrity as well. And I'm very proud of what we've built here at Pro Cannabis Media. I'm going to wrap this thing up on recording, because I definitely want to play the whole thing, but I'm going to play that separately from the news. It'll be a standalone special in the weeds kind of a thing. That's what I'm doing now, Marianne, is I'm producing the news show, but the extra stuff that I'm adding into the news show, I'm making into the In the Weeds podcast, which is our longest running, most downloaded and all that neat stuff.